Hey, I'm Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, in celebration of International Guitar Month, Pete Townsend of The Who will join us.
Pete went deep with us into his relationship with the guitar and with music in general, the new Broadway version of Tommy. He clarified the status and the future of The Who, and much, much more.
Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Keeping it, relative to L and Rogue Agents, if you notice, with Rogue Agents, there's a lot of horns in it, right? There's, like, if you listen to, On the Rise, and if you listen to Pass It Off, and there's a lot of brass and major plate. There's a lot of brass in the album in its entirety. And one of the reasons is because, aside from the fact that we wanted to make, like, a statement, right, and brass, horns, trumpets and trombones and saxes, they kind of had this I'm going to make a statement sort of a sound, very celebratory type of a thing. But aside from that, L's voice tends to sound very big, very in your face. I recently read on a blog, like, L the Sensei does bully rap, so to speak. I didn't realize, there was such a thing as bully rap. I'm like, L's cool, he's not a bully or anything. But I think what the point they're trying to get across is that his voice has a lot of presence, right? So I think the brass is something that also has a lot of presence and complements well. It goes well together, right? And then at the same time, I also use a lot of keys. For some reason, I think the texture of his voice sounds really good, whether it's with a Rhodes or a Hammond or even just a grand piano. It just, depending on how it's played, obviously, it sounds really, really good. There's a certain, when I'm mixing his vocals, there's a certain compressor settings that I use, because I know that when I bring in the bass, his voice is going to be so big that the bass will get drowned out if I don't mix it right. So actually, there's times when I'm mixing his vocals where I take away a little bit of the bass on his vocals and mix it just right. Sometimes it's hard to tell if you listen. If I do it the rightest way that I can, it's hard to tell that I've taken bass away from his voice. But I do, to make room for the bass line in the songs and room for the bass and the kicks and all that kind of stuff. So you're right. Just to answer your question, there are certain ways I need to approach the beats I'm going to present to him, because I know the texture of his voice, and that goes back to the relationship he and I developed, where we got to know each other, not just as artist and producer, but as people. I kind of got into his head, figure out what he likes, and, things of that nature.
Hey, I'm Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, in celebration of International Guitar Month, Pete Townsend of The Who will join us.
Pete went deep with us into his relationship with the guitar and with music in general, the new Broadway version of Tommy. He clarified the status and the future of The Who, and much, much more.
Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.